I'm excited to have Ed Gillispie here with us this morning. He's one of our coaches and a fellow job seeker. So he is kind of a pro at networking, and he's going to be giving a talk on making an impact on networking. He's got a long history, 27 years of executive leadership and general management and sales, with a lot of that being at Dell recently. And so, Ed, come join us up here, and thanks for speaking.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Great. Fantastic. It is my honor to get to discuss with you making an impact by networking. How many networkers do I have out there? Should be everybody. That's right. Thank you, Dave. And how many folks are extroverted networkers? Just get a lot of energy from just interacting with people and getting to know them and sharing your story. Okay, and how many of you are introverted by nature, by God's design, but you still network? Okay, and then the last category, how many are introverted and just can't stand networking? Just, ooh. There's only one honest person, two honest people here in the room? Three? Okay, thank you for the three of you that showed up and were honest. No, I'm just kidding. So my prayer is that each one of you will be passionate networkers, and I've got hopefully a few things to share, and my prayer is that one of these things that I share would speak to you and encourage you and give you hope and motivate you to take action on networking. So let's get started. Beforehand, let me just start in a quick prayer, as Craig just mentioned. Father God, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to gather. We ask that you would give us your perspective on networking and inspire us and encourage us to serve you and to serve one another. In Jesus' name. So I'd ask you to turn your brains on. Those of you that have already got pen and paper, thank you. I might say one thing that you might want to write down. I hope so. That's my prayer, that would inspire you to take action on it. And so you'll have that pen and paper handy. When did networking start? This is going to be interactive, by the way. We're going to be talking about making an impact of networking. So when did networking start? When you were born? Right after we started talking. Okay, good. As soon as there was two people. Okay, getting warm. For the answer I'm looking for, Adam and Eve. Networking started when God created Adam and Eve in his image, Genesis 1:27. Our purpose in life. Anybody trying to seek out their purpose in addition to a job? Yes? Okay, there's a few more honest people. Great. Our purpose is to glorify God, Isaiah 43:7. So seeking God tells us to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind first, right? That's the first commandment. The second commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the two primary things we're here for. And we tend to complicate life, don't we? Why in the world do we complicate life? I know I do. We're here to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's not a rhetorical question. Anybody have any thoughts? Why do we complicate life?
We want to appear to be in control.
Control, yes. I love to be in control of things. I used to think many years ago when I was younger that I was in control of things or that I could control things. And I'm realizing over my life's journey that I'm not in control of anything. That's a great answer. What else? Why do we complicate life? If those are the two primary things we're supposed to be doing here, to love God and to love our neighbors ourselves, listening to lies of the enemy, that's right. It's another great one. Anybody else have anything? Yes, sir.
Love of self.
Love of self. It's good. We are selfish people, aren't we? Most of us really like ourselves. I really, really like myself a lot. Say that again louder, please. Yes, I love it. Bringing us right into the heart of what we're going to talk about. He said networking for our selfish gain. Okay, that's one of the myths of networking. Yes, ma'am. We need food and shelter, okay? Yeah, some of the basic needs. So we complicate life by all of these things and many, many more we could talk about all day. God plans to prosper you. See if this sounds familiar. Not to harm you, to give you a hope and to give you a future. Jeremiah 29:11. That's his promise to you and me. So there's no reason for us to complicate life. So I want to do another quick exercise, the power of visualization. Everybody close your eyes. I'm not going to come around and give you a willy in the ear or anything. Just work with me here. Close your eyes. And reflect on a time when you had a networking encounter that went well. A networking encounter that went well. Just think on it for a minute. Okay? Tell me why it went well. You can open your eyes and more interaction. I love interaction. I'm an extrovert. If you can't tell, those of you that I don't know, I love to interact with people. I get a lot of energy from it and love to hear your ideas. What about that networking encounter went well? Yes, Don?
I was able to help somebody.
You were able to help somebody.
You know, going well is an open-ended statement.
Love it.
You know, anytime you're talking to somebody and they're having a bad day and you're able to even just, get them.
Yes.
Even if you don't get them back up to here, just help them get up to here.
Yes.
It's a wonderful experience.
Yes, it is. It is wonderful. Blesses them and it blesses you.
Yeah.
And God never works in a one-way street. That's a great example. Thank you, Don. Right in the heart of our discussion today. Who else? Yes, sir. Dave?
Well, I'll dovetail into what Don said there is, it was helping somebody, but I didn't do anything other than listen to them. Develop a synergy between the two of us that led to me giving him some ideas where to go, and he gave me some pointers on where to go.
Yes.
Looking for a job and other avenues to look at.
Dave doesn't have the benefit of a microphone, so I'll repeat another great piece of input. Listening. Wow, what a novel thought. I like to talk. What about listening? Listening, I used to coach a lot of sales professionals. I spent 19 years of my 27 professional working years at Dell in various sales leadership positions, and listening was one of the forgotten skills by even excellent salespeople. So you're all salespeople. How many of you feel like you're a salesperson this morning? A reluctant hand, all right? Every one of you are salespeople, okay? Now, not the cheesy, smoozy, for selfish gain salesperson, but you are marketing yourself, okay? And listening is the most important skill, I promise you. Listening is the most important skill of being able to understand your market, understand your audience, and being able to discover needs. Because that's all selling is discovering needs and then solving those needs. And that's what you're about doing right now, is solving needs by being a job seeker. Great feedback. Thank you all for allowing me to create some interaction here early in our talk, and we'll continue to do that throughout the discussion. Let me share with you what I think is a really good captured definition of networking. First of all, it's a mindset. It's a mindset. There'll be a quiz later. It's a mindset. Networking is a mindset. How many of you, when I had you raise your hand about networking, thought it was an activity? Okay? Most of us do. Most of us do, including me, until I really started diagnosing the impact of networking. Networking is a mindset to create and cultivate long-term, mutually beneficial relationships, not salesy, or smoozy, or manipulatively connecting. Negative perceptions from bad experiences prevents us from growing with people. Rather, ask meaningful questions, listen, and help others, and you will be an effective networker. We just heard that from several of you. Don't let misuse or bad experience prevent networking. Here's a question in the middle of this definition. When should you network? All the time. Yes, all the time. Why? Because God called us to love Him and to love our neighbor as ourselves, and that's networking. Don't be pushy, like a sales-driven, self-focused fool. We've already heard that this morning. But network like crazy. Be a crazy networker. How many people want to be a crazy networker? Okay, crazy defined by effective, I would say. And giving 100% and expecting zero in return. Anybody heard about this little short read from Al Ritter? Is the author Al Ritter, called the 100-0 principle? It means in the net. If you want to read it, great. It's a short, easy read. The net of it is give 100%, expect zero in return. That's hard to do because we all have expectations of whatever we're doing and interacting with folks, especially in networking. Go test it. Go test me, but more importantly, go test God. If you will have a mindset around networking to serve others and to help others and to listen and to give 100% of the time and expect zero in return, test God on that and see if He won't help you develop more effective relationships that are more long-standing and enduring and mutually beneficial. Help you see your own heart issues. I got a lot of stuff up here that's, some of it's pretty good. But getting it from here down to here, that 18 inches, into my heart and into action as life transformation, that's the journey of life, right? I can learn a lot of things up here, but then I've got to transfer that into meaningful action that's life to me. And I would encourage you to think about networking that way. Let's talk about some myths of networking, just to dispel them a little bit. And I bet you have a whole laundry list that you could share with me as well. But one of them is it's all about me. Because some of you that didn't raise your hand, or you were the 3 honest people that said, I don't really like networking. You don't like it because you think it's all about you. It's not all about you. It's all about them. Remember what we're called to do? Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't say anything about me. Back to that 100-0 principle. That you got to tell everything about yourself, what I call and used to coach people on, the show up and throw up. It's pretty miserable if you have ever endured that. I'm sure people have endured that from me before, and God forgive me and sorry to them as well. But a lot of people do that because they think that's the last chance they're ever going to get in front of that person, and they've got to just convince them that they're the best and that they want to have a long-standing, enduring relationship, and you want to get something out of that interaction right then. Like I used to tell salespeople, you don't close the purchase order on the first meeting. You don't even develop the relationship that the customer is going to trust you by long-standing in one meeting. It's a journey. It takes time. You have to earn that credibility and that trust. Same way with any relationship. So it's not about you, and you don't have to share everything about yourself all at once. That's why personal branding is so important. How many of you attended personal branding here? Okay, if you haven't, quick commercial, please make it a priority to do that. It will help you really package who you are and how to effectively communicate it, your top selling attributes, so that you can write off the cuff very quickly at the grocery store, at the ball game, at a job club, wherever you are, share your personal brand and who you are and what value you provide. Some other myths. You must be an extrovert. You introverts out there, you are effective networkers. In fact, I would submit to you, being a fellow extrovert, the introverts are many times better at it because they know how to listen and they want to, by design, develop closer relationships with individuals. You've got that one person in front of you I like to talk to crowds. I like to talk to a lot of people. I like to have a lot of relationships. I don't always go as deep with Don. But if I'm an introvert, I might go deeper with Don and get to know him and his needs and build a long-standing, enduring relationship. You introverts do very well at that by nature. So you are an effective networker. You just may not realize it, but you hopefully will by the end of today's discussion. That networking is easy or it's hard. Whatever your point of view is, it's neither easy nor hard. It's just a way of life. Another myth, that knowledge is better than people, that you should know more. I would submit to you that the richness in your life will come. What you will celebrate at your 100th birthday, besides a bunch of candles you can't blow out, is the impact that you've made on people. The legacy that you want to leave this world are the investments that you've made in people, and you do that through networking. That's right. Networking with your family, your immediate family, networking with your extended family, networking with your neighbors, networking with your coworkers, networking with your friends and your friends of friends. It goes on and on and on. That's networking. Okay, so have I convinced you that it's important to network and that it's God's design? Any doubters out there? Okay. If you do or you have questions you want to challenge me, just ping me later. I'm here every Monday. So networking is a lifestyle. And oh, by the way, if you're a job seeker, over 80% of the jobs come from networking. So if you're sitting in front of your computer, here's another little tangent. If you're sitting in front of your computer and you're applying for jobs, not to say that that's wrong, you need to do some of that, but that's all you're doing, or a big majority of your time is spent on that, I would submit to you need to reevaluate your game plan. And we'll talk about specific practical actions on your game plan for being a good, effective networker. Because how are you connecting if you're behind your PC just submitting applications or just emailing people or just pinging their LinkedIn? I would submit to you that God designed us to be interdependent upon one another, like we've talked about already, and you have to do that through connecting. So you can still connect on the phone, you can still connect over email or in mail, but the most effective way is in person. So I would encourage you to think about, how can I connect with even just one person a day? Have a one-a-day goal. My goal every day is just to impact somebody in a positive way one time a day. Sometimes I eke out one, barely, because there's stuff going on. Sometimes there's 5 or 10, on my best day. And so set yourself whatever your realistic goals are to be able to accomplish, and we'll talk about that practically here in just a minute. Here's another practical help. Anybody familiar with Some Assembly Required? Book by Tom Singer. A couple of you. He's spoken here before. If you don't have this book, I would encourage you to think about it. It's a very practical how-to on networking. Tom Singer, Some Assembly Required. A couple of other resources I'll share early on in terms of things you can check out. Of course, the internet is filled with valuable tips and tricks on effective networking. Another great resource is Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. I mentioned the 100-0 principle, which again is that mindset that we're talking about serving others 100% of the time and having zero expectations in return. Another really cool read that's related, but related to interviewing, which is, again, related to networking. 60 Seconds and You're Hired. 60 Seconds and You're Hired, which is by Robin Ryan. So let's continue discussing how we fulfill God's plan for your life by being intentional about networking, making an impact, serving others by loving them, solving their needs, which is relationship building. Remember I told you there'd be a quiz later? It's a pop quiz. Making an impact by networking is a mindset. Thank you. You made a 100 on the pop quiz. Congratulations. Making an impact by networking is a mindset. Another illustration that I like to use that we talk about in our networking group, either myself or Irma, who now leads it, is the illustration of a pebble thrown in a pond. What happens to that pebble? Ripples out. So think about that in terms of networking. You're probably fairly comfortable with that immediate ripple, that immediate network. Close family, friends, close coworkers, former coworkers. But the idea is to get past that. Who do we need to network with? Everyone. That's right. Everyone we need to network with. That's right. And why? Everybody's equal in God's eyes, and we're called to, right? We are commanded to love God and to love each other as ourselves. That's exactly right. You got it. Another A. 100. Well, let's discuss how do we get a job. We're going to get more practical. You know, this is a bit of a paradox as well. I don't know if you're thinking about this. Okay, wait a minute. If he really does this even half the time, how does he ever get any progress? I promise you, when you are authentic about taking time to listen and to understand someone else's needs and try to help them, they will reciprocate. And if they don't reciprocate, that one-to-one, if Mark and I talk and Mark serves me and listens to me and helps me, and I unload on him in a time of need, and Mark walks away getting quote-unquote nothing in return, I bet you he's going to be blessed by helping me and encouragement, like Don said. But I bet you he's going to get the help he needs, either from me or from someone else. So it's counterintuitive, because in our society, it's all about me. It's all about what can I get and what can I store up for the future and preserve and protect, instead of being a giver, which is what we all are here. Every one of you are givers. See, I don't know most of you, but I know something about all of you. You're all givers. The opposite, there's only two types of people in the world: a giver and a taker. Not to oversimplify or offend anybody, but how many givers do I have out there? Every one of you are going to consciously choose to be a giver. I certainly want to be a giver. And the Bible says in Acts, it's better to give than to receive. Well, guess what? Sometimes you do need to give, and it's better to give, but sometimes you do need to receive so that other person can get the blessing of being able to give to you. So sometimes that creates some need for humility. I know it does for me. Swallow the pride and let Pancho help me when he's offering to help me, or whomever else that you come in contact with. But you've got to humble yourself and listen and be able to do that. All right, let's get practical, as somebody just prompted me a minute ago. How do we get a job? Okay, I would submit to you this is a much higher calling than getting a job. So keep in mind what we've just talked about. It's a mindset. You're going to get a job, every one of you. But you're not going to just get a job. You're going to get a career. You're not going to just get a career. You're going to get a what? A calling, a purpose. That's what we're after here at Job Seekers Network. Yes, a better fitting job faster, but we're after helping you identify the unique gifts and talents that God has given you, many of which you already know. Some of you are in touch with those, some of you are not, and you're discovering those. Embrace the discovery. I'm a fellow job seeker. I've been embracing the discovery of some of the gifts and talents that I know God has given me, and then getting comfortable with them and making sure I'm being very thoughtful and consciously exercising those gifts and talents. Because every one of you is very uniquely designed by God for a very specific purpose and calling, and nobody else can fulfill it. So if you don't fulfill your purpose and calling, it's not going to get done. You could say, oh, God will just pass me over and move on to somebody else. Not in the way that he designed you and in the outcomes that he wants you to accomplish them. It may get done a different way, but it may get done but a different way, but not through you, because you're uniquely made. So think about that. That's an awesome opportunity and responsibility. So as you define your purpose, let's talk a little bit about how. Because we've talked about what, we've talked about who. Networking for a job or career advancement or community service or helping kids at school or college career, whatever it is that you're networking for. In this particular context, it's for job seekers mostly. But I would submit to you that if you broaden your networking, you'll be much happier. Even as you're a job seeker, embrace the fact that God has you here for a reason, and it may not be just to find a better fitting job faster. It may be because he wants you to really lay hold of what he has for the next phase of your life, broader than just income and a career or a calling. The calling is what you're after. But whatever it is, document your plan. How many of you have a documented game plan? Documented, written down, typed down, what have you? 1, 2, okay, not very many folks, okay? How many of you have it up in your head? I've got a fairly good documented plan up in my head, okay? We did rapid assessment a couple weeks ago and talked about that. I would heavily encourage you to document your game plan. And it changes, it's evergreen. Your plan is a big, broad plan, and then it can be edited daily and weekly as you go and monitor that and work on it together. But have a documented plan. List out, as it relates to being a job seeker, the target companies. How many of you have target companies that you're interested in learning more about? You may or may not want to work for them, right? You don't know. You're not out there desperate to go find a job and just work for anybody. You're not. No matter how you walked in here feeling this morning, no matter what your financial situation is, no matter what your emotional state is, you are not desperate. Okay, remember, it's a mindset. List the target companies you want to take a look at. Explore, be creative, use all the resources that you have. Identify some contacts in those target companies. Or identify contacts that you're not sure even who they work with, but you feel like, hey, this is somebody I need to network with. I was networking with somebody last week on Thursday, and we'd met before in a group setting, and I asked him to meet with me one-on-one, and he recommended 3 people that I connect with, one of which was a neighbor, my neighbor, not his, who I know of, but I didn't know what he did, and his wife and my wife know each other, and our kids know each other, but the dads don't know each other. So that happens all the time for me. I feel like Kevin Bacon, for those of you that are my age, 6 degrees of separation. So a lot of small world, especially in Austin. You know, as you network, make sure you're continuing to be authentic and serving others, and it'll come back and around and help you. Set some SMART goals, the acronym SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Set some SMART goals for yourself. Activities and outcomes, because you only control what I used to coach folks and still do. You only control your activities and your attitude. And in my world, as a sales leader, a lot of salespeople feel like they control a lot of things. We talked about that earlier, controlling things. We control very little in life, but we do control our activities and our attitude. So every day, whatever you have to do, whether it's in prayer, whether it's looking in the mirror and pulling an Al Franken, whatever it is that you need to do to make sure that you are really focusing on being your best and focusing on some SMART goals that are activities and outcomes based. Number of contacts you want to reach today, number of contacts. By the way, if I want to reach some contacts and some people today, I probably should have done that a week or 2 ago, right? There's a chance that I'm going to be able to network and connect with some new people today, and God will bring some people in my path. But you need to plan, be intentional and plan it. I usually try to plan my meetings, especially the face-to-face ones, 1, maybe 2 weeks in advance. 3 weeks, depending on how busy somebody is, and you don't want to look desperate. I had another gentleman that worked for me, account executive at Dell, who was older than I was, and so it was very quick to learn that I needed to provide him value in a different way. He had a lot more experience than I did. And this was about 15 years ago. And so it was a very unique relationship, mutual respect, and trying to show him value. And I learned a lot from him. And I'm in the car with him one day, and he said, well, he's from Enid, Oklahoma. He says, well, Ed, you don't get fed when you look hungry. And I thought about that, and I thought, oh, you're so right, Stuart. You don't get fed when you look hungry. So think about that. Have a purpose for your meeting. What I call it and coached people on for years is having an end in mind, an agenda that is based on an outcome. And by the way, the outcome in front of a customer is customer focused. We talked about listening earlier and uncovering needs and solving those needs. If I go with the purpose of, I'm going to get my needs met, it's going to be very self-serving. It's going to be really transparently ugly, and they might tolerate the meeting, but there probably isn't going to be any value unless they're just a really great-hearted person that sees past my depravity and wants to just help me. But if I'm focused on them, and I really want to seek to understand what does Dennis need and how can I help him and serve him and build a enduring relationship with him. And at the beginning of the meeting, I say, my goal for this meeting is to figure out how I can help you some way, Dennis. How can I serve you? Have you ever just looked at somebody in the eyeballs one-on-one and say, how can I serve you? It's a powerful thing to ask. And sometimes it shakes them out of their own world for a minute because most people don't do it. What I'm describing is how do you differentiate yourself? It's how to build enduring relationships, how to set yourself apart from the masses, from all the other interactions that people have. I'm like, wow, this person seemed genuine, authentic, and really wanted to help me. And then follow up. It's most important to have that in-person meeting when you can. An email, electronic exchange is okay, a phone call is okay, but go for that in-person meeting. Set up as many of those in-person meetings as you can. Another colleague that left Dell before I did said, and very metric-oriented company for those of you that are familiar with Dell, we metriced ourselves, our people, our organizations, and in one healthy aspect of that is metricing yourself on those face-to-face interactions. And I remember this one interaction of this gentleman that left. David said, when I got intentional about being ready to go back into the workforce, I made sure that I never ate alone for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, that's a pretty lofty goal. You may not be able to accomplish networking breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but I would submit to you probably can do that once a day. And it doesn't have to be a big, expensive interaction. It can be a coffee at Starbucks. It can be, an iced tea wherever you like to go, and just be intentional about that. But I would encourage you to set those goals, have an end in mind, or a purpose for your meeting that is outcomes based for that other person, and then follow up. Be crisp with your personal brand. You've got that opportunity to share who you are and what value you provide. I'll share a few open-ended questions with you. You can sit and brainstorm and have hundreds of these. If any of you want any of these, you don't have to scramble to jot them all down, but here's a few that might tickle your ear. Tell me about your frog. Frog is an acronym. Your family, recreation, occupation, or goals. Just pick one of those and say, tell me about your family. By the way, all these start with tell me because it's an open-ended. Tell me about yourself or your interests. And then that's your opportunity to reciprocate. Hopefully they're not too narcissistic and they'll ask you to respond in kind, which is your opportunity to share your elevator pitch. Tell me about your passions. That's your opportunity to share your calling and your purpose. Tell me about your ideal customer and why. Everybody has a customer, no matter what you're doing. Who is your ideal customer? And more importantly, why is that your ideal customer? Like I said, we're all in sales, and we're targeting folks to solve their needs. Tell me about your most rewarding moments and why. Everybody likes to talk about stories and things that went well. It's your chance to talk about your priorities. You know, my personal priorities are my faith, my family, and my character. Tell me about your greatest job search needs. Might be somebody that is a job seeker. You can be appropriately transparent and specific about yours. Tell me how I can best help you or I can serve you. And then what next steps shall we take? And get a mutual agreement from both of you on steps that we can both take that are meaningful for each of us. And follow up. Follow up. Because remember, making an impact by networking is it's a mindset. Another pop quiz you made 100 on. The follow-up is key. Okay, let's talk about the follow-up, practical follow-up. You get busy, you're scrambling. Oh, I got a hot lead here, and that last 3 contacts I made were average at best, and I really don't think I really got anything out of them. I might have encouraged them and helped them, but let's just get honest here. But I got this hot lead. So I forget to follow up with those 3 people that we agreed to some mutual follow-up actions. They might be forgiving, but you might completely forget about them, and there might be a real opportunity that you didn't see on the surface. So I would encourage you to follow up with an in-person thank you right then. Make sure you're very authentic and intentional about and genuine about thanking them. That you follow up with an email or a phone call. As many excuses to reconnect and touch and thank them and follow up is what I would submit to you. And as you're doing that, continue to listen, as we talked about earlier, and then act. What are their needs? What are their advice? How can you help them? And then follow up. Be proactive and responsive. Show your work. Look for excuses to reconnect and give updates. Give them helpful follow-up. None of this is rocket science. Have I said anything yet today that you're like, duh? I haven't, right? You may have written it down because you're being polite to me, thinking that I'm saying something earth-shattering. I'm not saying anything super fantastic. This is all very basic, but you'd be surprised how few people do it. It's that old adage, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. This isn't difficult in the sense of it takes a lot of intellect. It just takes intentionality. And it takes you having a mindset. That's right. Track your progress. Stay organized. Whatever your resource organizational tools are, Excel, Word, Google Doc, calendar, meetings, alerts, alarms, follow-ups on your smartphone, whatever it is. I calendar all meaningful interaction. I calendar all meaningful interaction. And I do follow-ups. And I can't think, there was probably one time many years ago where I could remember all that stuff, but I can't anymore, and I have to use technology. I wish I could walk around with a big Chief tablet and a number 2 pencil, and that all worked for me, but that would be my preference, but I can't do that anymore. I've got to track everything. So whatever you want to use that works for you, there's a lot of great tools out there, even personal CRMs. Yes? I use my calendar, and I use an Excel tracking tool that a gentleman here named Paul developed that's available for anybody that wants it. And it's kind of his own little homegrown database tracking with tabs and fancy outputs. I would also ask others what they're doing. How many of you are best practice shoppers? I like to learn from others and steal shamelessly and give them the credit for it. Okay, like I just did. Paul developed Capiobanca, a great tool to track. And you adopt whatever somebody builds and develops and thank them and figure out how to turn around and bless them. It's a great way to network. I would encourage you to script your Q&A per meeting. Make sure you're well prepared, even if it's just a casual meeting, even if it's somebody that you think you know and you're real comfortable with. Those ones that we have a lot of unknowns, you probably prepare because you have a little more anxiety. Even the ones that you would take for granted and be more familiar with, encourage you to prepare. Have that meeting agenda, that end in mind, that's going to be outcomes-based, that benefits them, you're going to serve them, and you're going to serve others, just like God designed us to do. Have your personal brand ready, your top 3 selling attributes. Have your elevator pitch ready. If you've participated in Design and Focus or Living the Called Life here, you've got fantastic insight on who you are and how you're going to focus those attributes positively, so use those. And remember, God has called you this work. Wherever you are spiritually, it doesn't really matter, because God's called you to this work. Whether you believe it or not, doesn't make it true or false. It's true. You are called to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that is networking. Make sure that you are one of those givers and not one of those takers. Now, you have needs. We all have needs. That doesn't mean that if you're a giver, that you're not going to get your needs met. It's all about the approach and being differentiated in your approach. It's all about making an impact by networking, which is a mindset. Thank you all very much. Anybody have any questions for me that you didn't ask? We can run around, and Helen Vanna White is in the back. She can run the microphone back. Anybody questions? Anybody have any comments? Anybody want to challenge me publicly about anything I've said or didn't say? Yes, ma'am. We'll get you the microphone.
Would you please repeat the acronym SMART? And
Yes, SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And just noodle on that for a bit around what, besides it being a cute little acronym that you can remember, but what does that mean for you in terms of your activities and your attitude? And customize it for you. Because what's smart for me may be really dumb for you. So you figure that out on your own. That's an individual thing. Thanks for the question. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us some examples of how you network with people that you don't really know well or don't know at all?
Great question. A how-to on how to network with folks that you don't know. So I typically look for that pebble in the pond. So if I don't know them and they're out several rings out, so I'm looking for what connection do I have to that person. Sometimes there's a direct connection on LinkedIn, for example, where we're connected to somebody mutually, and I ask for a sponsor. I ask for that person to sponsor me in to that relationship. That would be one way. Let's take the other extreme. That would be kind of a hot connection, would be easy because I know somebody and that person is going to be willing to introduce me. Another opposite extreme would be I don't know the person, I don't have any connections. Be brave and go seek them out. And find something out about them. The power of the internet is a beautiful thing that you can find out potentially they have a need for, and approach them. And tell your story very briefly, electronically, and follow up. You can find their phone number, their email. You can do lots of things right there on the internet through LinkedIn and other resources. And approach them and tell them your very quick personal story electronically and on the phone if you can. And ask them for 15 minutes. How many of you would give me 15 minutes of your life if I ask you? Don't tell me just because you think that's my right answer. But most of you would. Especially if I'm authentic and I'm genuine and I am approaching you in a way that I really genuinely want to help you. You'll probably give me 15 minutes, even if you're crazy busy at work or personal life, what have you. Great question. Thanks. Who else has something? Yeah, it is.
So, sometimes,
I just gave that one
as
example.
a last resort, you can't network in. How about cold calling?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
If it's specific to a job, and you want to cold call in for those of you non-sales people is, you don't have a lead. There's nothing warm about a relationship. Either you know them or you don't know anybody around them. If it's a hiring manager or if it's a HR leader and you know there's a job there and you want to go after it, be politely persistent. I got my job at Dell 19 years ago, which was life-changing, because I was politely persistent with the hiring manager. I was a general manager of a hotel, loved the job. It was a lot of hard work and a lot of low pay, but I loved the job, and I was 24 years old and had a lot of responsibility, and I just had all these friends that were at Dell that were making twice what I was making with a tenth the responsibility, and they were progressing in their career, and it was their first job ever, and they had no frame of reference to what reality was in the 90s, and it was my third real job. And so I gracefully exited the hotel job by politely pursuing some contacts at Dell. And the guy that hired me, that I politely persisted with for several months, as I walked in for what I ended up being the final interview and getting the job in September of 1996, he hears my voice as I'm being escorted in to the interview room, and he goes, "There's my pain in the ass." And I said, "Yes, Jeff, I am, and I'll continue to be until you hire me." So I was politely persistent, and it worked, and you have to continue to do that. Look for ways to get in. Look for open doors, cracks. Find a reason to differentiate yourself through that cold call and differentiate. Don't allow yourself to be on the stack of 200 applications. The other great way to do it is network in cold call, however you want to describe it, before there's a job posting. As I've talked about with target companies, you may or may not want to work for that company. You're exploring. I tell people right now, I want to leverage my 27 years of sales, executive leadership, and general management to passionately exercise my servant leadership, and I'm patiently exploring career next steps. That's kind of a couple of my one-liners that I use. I'm patiently exploring career next steps. Now, some days I'm more impatient than others, but I really try to exercise patience. And you may want to approach that company just to learn about them. Well, you're getting so much value out of that 15-minute interaction that they'll probably give you in their cafeteria, or you'll buy them coffee somewhere off-site. Nina, who was a job seeker here a few months ago, approached somebody that she didn't know, wanted to do an informational meeting. We also call them informational interviews. I like to take the interview word out because it creates some tension for both you and them. But an informational meeting, and Nina approached this person cold and got the 15-minute meeting from this hiring manager, and she thanked Nina for meeting with her, and she says, "Oh, I'm so busy with my job, and I really would like to be a networker myself, even though I have a job, for all the good reasons we just described." And Nina says, "Well, I'm going to this event next week. Would you like to join me?" She said, "I would love to join you." And she provided a real benefit to this lady who didn't have the time to schedule and didn't want to go by herself. And so they did the buddy system. And so then Nina created a relationship with somebody and differentiated herself. That's pretty simple, right? Just the time and the talents that you have, just employ them. Employ your time and talents that you have. You have a gift. So I already told you all have wonderful skills and talents that nobody else has, that no one else can fulfill but you. But you've also got a unique opportunity right now because you've got time. And a lot of these folks that are working don't have as much time as you. That's a gift. Use that as a lever.
So I have a suggestion that I've used, and it provoked me with what you had just said about being able to reach out to people and provide some value. So one of the things you could do is follow them on Twitter. And then the way you get to introduce yourself is retweet what they said. If it's interesting to you and it's a subject matter that you have some knowledge about, then do your research, right? Then tweet about them and what they've accomplished and tie into what you've accomplished. And you might even include your LinkedIn address. You could get it shortened and have it that way. And then you call them up and ask them for what you just asked for, which is an information interview. But be prepared to add value. Be prepared to say, take a task. Hey, I can look that up for you. Before you ask, can you introduce me to this job or this interview, try to show the person you can add value by taking on a task and providing them with some relevant information. And then it flows naturally from there.
That's great, Dennis. Thank you for that. Twitter's a powerful tool I haven't mentioned today. Dennis does a great job of using his personal brand through Twitter. We were talking about it just the other day. Some of the things he does as being a channel executive and being able to communicate through Twitter, a big part of his value and his brand. And you can do that. And you can do that with others. Do it for yourself and do it with others. It's a great idea.
Last question.
I just was wondering if you could repeat the name of the book. It was some 100.
Oh yes, the 100-0 principle. That's the name of the book, and the author is Al Ritter, Ritter. You're welcome.
Well, Ed, thank you so much
bet. Thank you.
for sharing with us this morning.
Thank you all.